I'm going.
I went before you. All right.
Oh.
Okay, good. That's okay.
Hold
you know
on,
what? Doug's going to be magical. He'll get rid of the cat.
I got 2 dogs, 1 cat, 3 children in this house. Anything could happen. So
anything could happen. I have 2 dogs. We have a whole farm going here between all of us. Hello, Warners. Welcome to Women Your Mother Warned You About,
the podcast that makes sales sexy again. I'm Rachel Tipton, realtor, mom, and creator of The Closing Curve.
And I'm Gina Tremarco, founder and sales trainer at Pivot 10 Results and Carolina Improv. Hey, Rach, how's it going?
It's going. Super excited about today's show and a little tired after running this morning, but it was good.
You're my hero. 12 miles. You ran 12 miles, right?
Yep, trying to get ready for my first marathon.
Well, I was sleeping while you were running, so thanks for going out there and running.
Somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it. You're the girl for it. Hey, I am really excited about this episode with Anthony Iannarino because he's a best-selling author and internationally recognized speaker on sales, success, personal development, leadership, and entrepreneurship. Anthony speaks to and provides transformational workshops to sales organizations throughout the world. His blog, thesalesblog.com, is read by 60,000 people each month, and his Sunday newsletter reaches 80,000 people. And he has been continually named one of the 25 most influential people in the world in sales and marketing. Phew.
Wowie, wow.
That is pretty exciting. He's written 3 books: Eat Their Lunch, The Lost Art of Closing, and The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need. His newest book, Eat Their Lunch, is about competitive displacement, or as he likes to say, I think he said stealing business from the competitors. I think that's what he said, something like that. Is that what he said? Do you remember?
Swooping in and stealing people's competition. It's interesting. I'll be interested to hear what he has to say about that because I have always kind of had an aversion to taking other people's business. So,
well, it's going to be an interesting episode for sure.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So before we get started and we have Anthony on the show, I thought maybe we could read some of our 5-star reviews because that's what gets people listening to this show, and we really need more. P.S.
Cool. Here's a couple. Jennifer says on iTunes, love it. This podcast makes my commute more bearable. The banter between Gina and Rachel is both entertaining and enlightening with great tips and real life examples. Can't wait for the next episode. Thank you, Jennifer, for those 5 stars.
That is awesome.
And here is, it's pretty cool. Here's one from Will. Looks like Will, it's just like a little handle, so I don't know, but it looks like a guy who gave us 5 stars as well. Fun, sassy, strategic. Enjoyed this immensely and learned something, which is becoming increasingly rare in the podcast explosion. It is time well spent. My wife is especially looking forward to hearing more from Gina and Rachel. So clearly, well, maybe, you never know.
Might be a woman or a guy. Yep. Someone with a wife.
Warners, if you haven't given us a review yet, please go to our show on iTunes. 5 stars is our favorite and something fun we can read on upcoming episodes. You can also access our iTunes page from our website, womenyourmotherwarnedyouabout.com.
Awesome. We would love more reviews because it just makes us feel warm and fuzzy. And then we can give you a shout out. It's fun. It's fun.
Well, when somebody says something nice about me or you or anyone, it's always fun.
It's always fun. So let's get started on this episode with Anthony Iannarino. So, first of all, I thought this would be a good segue. I wanted to say thanks for accepting our request to be on our show because we're a really new show, and many have called us irreverent but relevant saleswomen. That's what the feedback's been, and I honestly didn't think you were going to respond so quickly. I'm like, I'm just going to try it. I'm going to reach out and I'm going to try it. And I thought that this would be a good segue about selling because you responded pretty quickly. You're not a nobody. You're kind of a somebody. People know you. Why, what worked in my approach to get you to come on this fairly new show besides our beauty?
That's a funny question. I answer my email at very specific times each week. And what I've decided is that if I'm willing to die with hundreds and hundreds of emails unresponded to, then I should also be willing to live with hundreds of emails unresponded to. So I check at certain times. So if it felt like I got back to you very quickly, I apologize if you thought that meant like I got back to you very quickly. You just happened to send something at a time where I try to answer all of my emails. And I try to do that at a certain couple times during the week. I try to get everything cleaned up, which is really difficult for me because I have 5 different inboxes. Plus LinkedIn decided that I have to have an inbox there. But you made certain that I was aware that you are part of the Seller Die Network. So because of that, you were borrowing credibility from Jeffrey Gitomer, who I love. And because you were smart enough to say, we're part of this already, then it doesn't really matter how new your show is because you're going to do really, really well as part of that network. And you're connected to a group of people who are going to succeed at getting a lot of attention on a brand. So that was it. Plus, I like the name.
Sweet.
I don't know about women your mother warned you about. She didn't warn me too much about women. She did warn me about who my friends were, and she was correct about that in a large way. But I was probably, there were probably more warnings about me than about either of the two of you as a young person, just so you know, like you're probably not even in the same category.
Well, you haven't gotten to know us yet.
So what you're saying is that it's all who you know, and the fact that we know Jeffrey Gitomer and we're part of that, that's helpful. I mean, people say that all the time. It's all who you know, but it really is true in a lot of instances.
It makes total, I mean, how could it be otherwise? Human relationships are still, the most important thing that you're going to have in your entire life. And so when you have a relationship and you can lean on that, and if he trusts you to put you on the network, then your trust with me went up because he wouldn't do that if it wasn't a good decision, because that wouldn't be something that he would do.
So it's back to that credibility part in selling, right? If you can borrow credibility, even if your credibility isn't fully there yet, people are going to trust that and at least be interested in listening to you. And the name helps.
The name helps too.
The name definitely. And we went round and round on that. And it was a temporary name until we could come up with something better. And then that was it.
We couldn't come up with anything better.
It's a good name.
Well, thanks. It's long, but it works and it gets attention. I do want to back up a little bit to the email. I would have really preferred if you would have made me feel special. And
no, I should have lied to you.
I'm just saying. That was another reason I was interested in your content to be on our show. Stephen Benson with Badger Mapping has been on my other show, The Pivotal Leader. And I had gone back through our guest list from that show to see who could we tap into that would be good for this show. And so we had a conversation and I knew you had been on his show. And so I listened to that episode and you talked about the importance of caring about people and how that, can be a big game changer in the selling arena. Oh, look at that. I used the arena. That was just for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, on the caring thing? Because we're all touchy-feely here at Women Your Mother Warned You About.
Yeah, it's something that I'm more and more being asked to describe for people. And basically what I think has happened is that there's really just 2 business models left, and they're going in very, very opposite directions. So one business model that comes out of Silicon Valley is everything needs to be technological. Everything needs to drive efficiency. You need to transact as fast and with as little friction as possible. And so you're seeing things like Amazon, and you're seeing people try to recreate that in every single market. How do I get rid of friction? And that's important, and it's an interesting model. And Amazon is brilliant. They're the best at it. Uber's pretty good at it. There's a number of people, and we're trying to do that in just every segment. How do we just transact? But at the same time, that's super transactional. There's also a model that's super relational. And super relational is don't get rid of the friction. Don't worry about efficiency. Worry about high trust, high value, high caring. Actually care deeply about what somebody's trying to do, enough to spend time to understand their needs and invest in that relationship. And what I would tell you, my experience is that when everybody zigs, you should zag. And when everybody's trying to figure out how to take caring out and say, how do we compress everything to shorten it? How do we try to get all of the friction that comes with dealing with human beings out of the system? That's exactly where somebody who can deal with the friction and can apply caring wins. So caring is the superpower now, unless you're transactional. I mean, if you're trying to compete with Amazon, forget everything I just said and try to figure out how to do that, even though they've got a really big head start. I mean, a really big head start. They're destroying whole industries because of what they do. And no one expected this kind of success with that. But if that's not your model, then you have to go the other direction. And I think everybody's getting pulled toward super transactional, and they really should be moving towards super relational. Relationships are still going to matter.
Why do you think people get so transactional or so focused on that versus relational?
Because it allows them to have the belief that all I have to do is set up this marketing funnel, set up this Taylorism of the sales process, slice everything into SDR, BDR, AE, AM, SME. You've got 8 people now because I can't let anybody have an expensive resource until they go through all these cheaper resources first. And what they're trying to do is just create an efficiency, because when it's Amazon, it looks like printing money. And a lot of the startup companies now are trying to figure out how do you just print money without having to deal with the customer at some level. And there are models where that works brilliantly, but then for most of us, if it's a service business specifically, if it's B2B and it's complex, I mean, all you do when you try to drive efficiency is reduce your effectiveness. And in human beings, fast is slow and slow is fast. So the faster you try to go in the relationship, the more you slow things down. And the slower you go, the faster things tend to happen, because that's how trust is created. And caring is what allows people to take the next step with you.
That reminds me, Rachel, of when we were getting this podcast going. Like when Rachel and I were talking, we were having breakfast once a week, and we're like, we should do a reality TV show. And then we're like, that's a lot of work. Let's do a podcast instead. And we started playing around with this idea, and we got this idea together and started working on it. And then I mentioned it to one of my mentors that we were doing it. And he kind of went silent on me when I told him. And then he's like, I love it. I want to be in it. I want to be on it. I want to help you get it off the ground. How much money do you need? And that goes back to that kind of creating that relationship. Well, we didn't have to really ask for anything. We just had to show our worth and have a relationship that someone trusted in. And those were his words to me. He said, I trust you.
Well, once you have trust, every transaction after that is easier, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way that works. If I know you, I like you, I trust you, and you create value for me. It's not just know, like, and trust. It's know, like, and trust, and you create value.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the part that also has to belong in that equation. But if I know that about you, then the next transaction's easier than the one before that, because we already have this success in the relationship. So coming up with the next thing to do together just gets easier and more natural. That's the value of having trust and caring.
This whole conversation makes me, because I'm in real estate, it makes me think about real estate and how there are some companies that are trying to make real estate so transactional, like Purple Bricks and these companies coming out that are trying to make it, remove the commission and remove the agent from the transaction and just make it super easy and quick for the buyer. But the truth of the matter is that in real estate, it's such an emotional purchase, and it's a big purchase and such an emotional purchase that the human aspect is just so important. And I say that at the same time that I'm developing a real estate software that's helping make it easier for the buyer, but it's really more for education of the buyer to understand the process. Because I do believe that there's things that humans can do better than processes online, transactional processes. And also people, it's so emotional, as I said, and buyers are just scared a lot of times of making this commitment to this big purchase that they're going to make memories in for the rest of their lives, and they need someone to hold their hand.
I had a real estate transaction a couple houses ago, and this house I built, and I just bought another house. So I'm moving in July 2 miles west of where I sit right now, instead of 400 or 500 miles south where there's no winter, but that's a different conversation. Anyway, in that transaction, we had done a deal. We had a contract. Everything was signed. We were at the signing. We were in one room and the seller was in another room. At that point in time, when his wife decided she didn't want to leave that house and she wasn't going to sign the contract. And that's how emotional that can get. And it took a lot of work over the course of a couple hours. And I'm talking about a literal couple hours.
Wow.
To get her to sign the contract. It was not easy. So these are emotional decisions. And when something is a big decision, it's complex, it comes with risk, it's a lot of money, there tends to be a lot of emotion, and automation doesn't really help with the psychology that goes around big decisions like this. Human beings tend to do a lot better.
Definitely. I know there's a lot of fear in the real estate industry from agents who fear that they're going to become obsolete due to efficiency of transactions online. But I don't sit in that fear. I believe that, yes, there'll be automation that'll make it easier. But as you mentioned, just there's so many human factors and emotional factors that it's people buying homes. It's not just property changing hands.
But the challenge, though, for every industry, and especially yours, if all you are is a tour guide. I mean, if all you can do is say, this is the kitchen. Yeah, I noticed that when I saw the refrigerator and the oven, I had a feeling the kitchen. You know, if you can't create greater value than the transaction, then you have a big problem. So you have to become, in my opinion, in your industry, you have to become even more super relational, because if all you can do is the same transaction that I can see the living room and I can see the bedrooms on Zillow right now. Okay. If all you can do is show me that, you have to create something greater there and help me understand, what trade-off am I making? Why is this house likely to be worth more in the future than that house? You know, how do I start making decisions? So to be a trusted advisor, you need two things. You need trust and you need advice. If you don't have the advice, then you're missing half of what you need to be super relational. So you really have to dig deep and say, how am I going to create this connection with somebody so that I am super relational? Otherwise, you're going to get transacted. So, and there are many, many real estate people, as you well know, who are transactional. And if you're transactional and that's what you're trying to do, it's going to be very tough to beat automation.
Right on.
Well, to me, this is a lot about, I'm always preaching this, is the emotional intelligence of it. Is it Jeb who wrote Sales EQ?
The book has the very best forward to any book ever written. I mean, really the whole value. And
did you write it?
I happened to write that forward to that one.
I read the book so long ago. I missed your forward. Now I got to go back and read it again.
It's a great book.
It's such a great book.
Just one of my closest friends.
Oh, good. We'll have him next. We'll all get together.
Okay.
So emotional intelligence. Let's talk a little bit about that and your perspective on it. So I'm big into this, and especially with some of the work that we do at our company using improv as a tool to improve emotional skills and relationship building. What are some suggestions you could give salespeople or people listening on how to be better with emotional intelligence?
Well, emotional intelligence is two things. So one, it starts with self-awareness and your ability to understand your own emotional state. So that's the first thing, and control that. And the second is the ability, At one point I would have said empathy. It's an empathy, it's an understanding, but I've changed my mind on that. Empathy means walking a mile in someone else's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think compassion is greater than empathy. Compassion is recognizing that those shoes are 2 sizes too small, and then caring enough to say, let's get you out of those shoes and get you into some different shoes.
I love that.
So I think the emotional intelligence, it's a really nice concept, except empathy means I have an understanding of what you're going through. Compassion means I'm willing to do something about it. And when you say emotional intelligence, if it's not matched by action, then it's a really nice concept. It's a really nice concept. If it's matched by action, then it's something greater than that. And I tend to look at sales through a couple lenses. So there's IQ, which is important. Mm-hmm. You do have to be smart to work in the business now. It's harder. You have to have business acumen. You have to read. You have to think. And that wasn't always true in sales. It was enough to understand your product. Then you need EQ. So we got IQ and we got EQ, those 2 things. And then you need MQ, which is the moral intelligence. So you need a set of values. And the values matter very, very much if you're going to be a trusted advisor, because you're helping people make decisions about their business. So where that comes from ends up being important too. So if you're a self-oriented, smarmy, pushy, trying to get my commission check kind of salesperson, that's low MQ. That's not going to serve you. And high MQ is what serves you in a sales role, because sales is now, it's in part a leadership role. I mean, you're actually helping lead somebody else's decisions about what they're doing and how they intend to get what they want. So that part matters as much to me. So I tend to look at it as all 3 of those things and the composite of what does that look like.
And the IQ we're born with, and the EQ we can work on. How do you feel about the MQ? Because that to me is you either have that or you don't, in my opinion.
Well, IQ can be improved.
Okay.
You can read, you can study, you can become an expert in your field. And I'm not. I mean, when you say IQ, people think the general IQ. So how good are you at spatial reasoning and reading comprehension? You can become an expert by knowing your industry and your business better than anyone else, and that's really, really helpful.
Okay.
So you can do the work to do that, and you can work on your MQ too. You can read literature. You can start to understand values.
Okay.
I mean, I would argue that what comes out of Silicon Valley right now, with especially all the big tech companies, is high IQ, manipulation of EQ, and low MQ. And low MQ means I'm going to exploit your data to make you buy things because I can see how you click. So the MQ can be worked on, but you'd have to study the humanities and things like that other than just STEM.
Yeah.
So that is what is woefully missing right now, is we're not having a big enough conversation about what values matter most in commercial relationships.
And
yeah, even though we're out there where there's so much woo-woo going on of people doing meditation and doing all those kind of woo-woo things, that they're not necessarily out there applying it to business.
I mean,
but they could.
Meditation's a really good starting point for both EQ and MQ.
Yeah.
If done properly, very, very helpful.
I notice an extreme difference in my day if I don't meditate first thing in the morning. Like I can, my day is different when I start with meditation. It seems more powerful and productive.
I'm an afternoon guy, so I'm in the morning. I'm already good. The Dalai Lama said the best meditation is sleep, and that tends to work for me. The sleep part, 7 hours, and then I'm good. But then in the afternoon, things get a little cluttered. That's the time for me to say, okay, reset.
Yeah. I do that with a walk. Like
another form of meditation.
Yeah, it's a form of meditation. I get up and go for. I did that the other day. I was like totally stressed out. I'm like, I'm gonna go walk.
I should probably try that afternoon meditation. Gina knows I have usually like my terrible time.
4:30.
It's about 4:30 meltdown.
It's the 4:30 meltdown.
Yeah, I should probably take a cue on that.
You can't be stressed and you can't be angry if you're running. You can't do those things at the same time. The fact that you're taking in so much air and struggling to breathe, while you start that kind of thing, you can't maintain a negative state because your body's just worried about, I need to get air. I need oxygen coming in. And then when you breathe, the stress level just starts to come down. So the walk is another way to just let that, because your body has to shift and your mind shifts with it. The physical part of it just shifts you right out of the gate.
It's true. I just got done doing a very long run this morning, and you're right. And I was in the middle of it thinking, you know what? All I'm doing right now is thinking about the pattern of my movement. I'm listening to my music. I'm looking around at the quiet beauty in the morning. Like, it's true. People don't realize me.
You don't live near me. You're south of me for sure.
He's in Ohio.
It was still cold. It was like 30 degrees, but it was cold.
We're so spoiled now. I'm like, I took the dogs out and I'm like, it's so cold. It's like 40.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'm in Ohio, so
I'm from Chicago originally, and I see what's going on. And all my cousins are complaining, and let's move to Vegas. I think the polar plunge is still happening this weekend. I'm like, it's freezing here. It's 40.
Chicago knows cold. That's cold.
Yeah, Ohio does too.
Yeah, we get pretty cold.
You get pretty cold.
So tell us about your book.
Oh my gosh,
Anthony.
You read my mind, Rachel. I was about to.
Did I?
Yeah.
I know that.
We're so
the new book.
Yes.
The new book is called Eat Their Lunch, and it is a book on competitive displacements, which is a nice way of saying stealing your competitors' customers. And there hadn't been a book written specifically with that intention. So how do you go and identify your dream client that has a long contract and then start to pull them away from your competition? And that's the gist of the whole book, is how do you do that? How do you create enough value to cause somebody to change? And then how do you manage that? And how do you capture the mind share? So the way that I look at it is everybody has this lens that they're looking at the world through. How do you swap that lens out, put something new in front of them so they can see new possibilities, and you can help them discover something about themselves, namely that they could be doing something different to produce better results. That's the gist of that book.
And how do you get in front of those competitors? What's a couple of, I don't know, ideas, tips?
Well, this is a tougher question because everybody wants there to be an easy answer here, but it's the hard answer. So the hard answer is there's basically 4 levels of value you can create. The first level is I have a good product, but nobody cares about your product because they're already buying something. The second level is my experience is good. We're easy to do business with. We've got good service, good support. Nobody cares about that either. You create problems when you install, and we expect you to solve them. The third level is I can get the tangible business result you're trying to produce. Well, everybody can do that and has been able to do that for 30 years. So that's been commoditized too. So the fourth level is I can help you identify a better future with strategic outcomes and help you get those strategic outcomes. So it's basically the shift from coming in at level 1 to level 4. So you come in at 4. You don't come in with your product, your company's history, any of that. You come in with, there's a reason for you to change, and here's what it is. That's chapter 1, just gives you level 4. Chapter 2 is about capturing mind share. So you have to know things about why your clients should change. You have to understand what the systemic challenges are in their industry, why those systemic challenges exist, what they should be doing about them, the trade-offs that they need to make. And the way you get in front of that is by sharing those ideas with a phone call, with a meeting, with the identification of those, what I call super trends, the implications of not changing. And that's how you move that lens out of the way and put a new lens there. And what you're doing is saying, look at it through this lens, look at it through this lens. And this is the thing about being a trusted advisor I think people misunderstand. If I take a white paper and I highlight 5 lines on it, and then I send you a note saying, just read these 5 lines, and this will help you understand why we think this is a big deal. And then you read those 5 lines, you've already started taking my advice. And then when I send you more and I say, I think this is interesting for you to look at, and I write some notes on there, and you look at the notes and you read it, you're already looking where I'm telling you to look. And that's the beginning of, can I get your attention around these ideas? Can I get your focus to shift over here long enough for somebody to say, you know what, this is interesting, and I want to take a look at it. And there's a cadence. In the third chapter of the book, how do you execute this? It's a cadence. It's not, prospecting's not a single event. Prospecting is a campaign to create the case for change, so that you can create an opportunity and displace your competitor. And it takes time, but it's the best thing for you to do, because that's how you win big accounts. And if you're going to be prospecting anyway, why wouldn't you be continually pursuing the best possible accounts in your territory?
Right. It's a long game. And I think a lot of people are looking for that short game, and how do I get it really fast?
True. That's the automation and all the other things we talked about. So if you take this approach, you don't have to worry about a whole bunch of people taking it with you, because they're trying to figure out how to automate everything.
Yeah. So that gives you kind of the unique selling proposition of just how you're going after the business. You're probably going to get more attention, because it goes back to creating that relationship and creating the trust, and people like to be cared about.
The truth of the matter is, you are the value proposition.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're the value proposition, what does that mean? That means you better be really good. That means you better really know your stuff. If you want to be a trusted advisor, you better be able to have the advice and the experience to back it up, and what I call situational knowledge. How do you decide what a trade-off is? And the interesting thing is a lot of people say, but my client knows more about their business than I do. Yeah, and they should. But you've installed your solution 560 times, and they bought it once. Who should have a better understanding of the trade-offs and what the right decisions are? They can't know enough about the intersection where your two businesses come together, because they don't buy enough for them to have that experience. So you should have enough of that. And if not, inside your four walls of your company, you should have that.
Yeah.
You just have to be smart and have a conversation so you know how to execute that kind of a thing.
You have a ebook on your website. We're going to include all this in the show notes. We'll put links to Anthony's books and to his website. But what caught my attention on your website was your ebook on cold calling. And I'm like, oh, this will be a good conversation, because I hate cold calling. And I'm like, good, he can call me out on this and call me to task on it. And I really liked I was going through the table of contents, the anti-cold calling crowd are charlatans, period.
Yes.
The truth about why salespeople don't like cold calling. C-level executives want to hear from you, maybe. I'd like to talk a little bit about, because I see the overlap with this, right? You want to steal the competition, and sometimes that's going to require you to cold call. And there are people who are not comfortable with that. I'd love to hear your perspective on how we can be better at that.
Any people that are uncomfortable that are maybe on this podcast with us right now?
Oh,
just one. Yeah.
You charlatan.
Tell me why. Tell me why you're uncomfortable with it.
I just feel like it's I like to create these relationships, and I don't want to do that cold call that's selling. Like I like a series. I like to nurture. I like to get to know, maybe putting value out there first before I get to the phone call. I want to work my way up to the phone call, because I feel like I'm creating trust that way.
So what is your primary fear?
Oh, the usual. I'm not going to get through to that person I'm calling. They're not going to want to listen to me, because who the heck am I? Having credibility when they don't know who I am. So I don't want to go direct into the cold call when I feel like I could I don't mind doing the long game. But now I'm like, well, maybe I need to do that cold call.
How long of a game?
Well, I mean, I've done the long game when it comes to sales training, it could be a really long game sometimes. I've been in the game for 15 months to land some clients.
15 months is nothing. I've waited 7 years
Okay.
for a client. Yeah. And I was not playing the long game. I was trying to play the shorter game by cold calling. There's always a fear. And you described a number of them. And so my bill for psychotherapy is much, much greater than anything we agreed to, but I will ask you to pay it when we send you the invoice.
You know what? Now you sound like Gitomer, because I heard him trying to charge you on his podcast, and now he's trying to charge me for the hashtag Tremarkable. But okay.
He's so funny.
I know.
He's just so funny. Here's the thing. Somebody's drowning. They're having a tough time. I mean, they're in the water. They're struggling against themselves. They can't make it to the shore, and you're a lifeguard. And you walk by and you go, I don't think that I can go help them because they may not know that I'm a world-class swimmer. And even though I could save them, I don't want them to be mad at me for interrupting them while they're drowning. I mean, they're already struggling, and now I'm going to interrupt them while they're doing this. I mean, what do you think you're doing when you make a cold call? You're calling because you have some way to serve somebody better than what they're doing right now, or you believe that. If you don't believe that, then you shouldn't be calling. You started by saying, I'm worried about the same kinds of things everybody is, like them not getting them on the phone. Well, actually, you probably like it when you don't get them on the phone, because then you don't have to try to say something to them. But here's the truth of the matter. I've done the research on this. 108 billion people have lived and died on this planet. I'm 93% certain that at some point I will die. I'm not 100%, but I'm almost a positive. So what are you doing? What are you doing with your time? If it's purpose and meaning, and you believe in your heart that you're supposed to be helping people, why on earth wouldn't you call them and have a conversation so that you could get a meeting? Because all you're doing when you make a cold call is one single thing: getting a meeting. That's the only thing you're doing. You're not pitching them. You're not doing anything other than, I'm asking another human being for a meeting. How is that offensive? And I know I know how much time you spend on LinkedIn by the fact that you think that cold calling is a thing that should be resisted, because that all comes from LinkedIn and all the charlatans out there saying you can never interrupt anybody. That's a ridiculous idea. Now, if you're interrupting somebody because they're not doing what they should do, you're serving them. You're not harming them. You're not trying to harm anybody. Yeah, but I don't want to feel like I'm selling them. You're not. You're asking them for a meeting. How much harm are you going to do asking another human being for a meeting? So yes, there will be grouchy people that answer the phone, and they're grouchy. And you know why? Not because you cold called them, because those are the grouchy people. The people that are grouchy are always grouchy. That's why we call them the grouchy group of people, because that's what they are. They're grouchy. And you have some people who are extremely loyal. And you know what we call those people?
Extremely loyal people.
Yes, the extremely loyal people. So you want them the most because they're extremely loyal. And when you take them away, they're going to be with you for a long time. We make way too much out of the cold call. But if you wanted my best advice, the call would say, Gina, listen, it's Anthony Iannarino. I'm with XYZ, and I'm calling you today because I want to ask you for a 20-minute meet and greet where I can give you an executive briefing on the 4 or 5 trends that are going to have the biggest impact on your sales force and the results you produce over the next 18 to 24 months. And listen, I'm going to leave you with the slide deck, and whether we ever do business together or not, you are going to challenge your management team to deal with some of the things and some of the questions that we'll probably talk about. What do you look like Thursday for an executive briefing? We'll share some things about what's changed in sales, some of the things that we're helping our clients do. And if there's a next step for us, we'll both know.
That's amazing.
So what did I do that was offensive there?
Oh no,
I mean nothing.
Nothing at all. And I think I'm not the only charlatan for one. I mean, I'm the charlatan right now on this call, and Rachel might be a charlatan too.
I didn't know you were a charlatan, but you
I'm
self-disclosed.
A charlatan. I am. In real estate, cold calling is a big deal for a lot of folks, and I have fear. I have fear of it, but I think that you just illustrated so beautifully
that's awesome.
that analogy of the drowning person is calling, for example, expired listings of folks who didn't sell their home. A lot of times the frustration from the grumpy people is, well, where the heck were you when my house was just on the market? Why didn't you bring a buyer then? And, they're just frustrated, but why not offer to help the drowning person who they still want to sell their house. They really wish it was already sold. So if I can offer greater value and assist them in some way, it's a great way to look at it for folks like me that are like, oh, I just don't want him to get mad at me. Well,
I mean, that's actually a good segue, Rachel, because one of the things we wanted to ask Anthony about too is the role of women in sales. I don't always feel like there's as many as there are men, but when it comes to women in sales, sometimes I think we get to that. We have more fear because we're worried about hurting people's feelings or offending them. I know some women are going to get offended by the fact that I said that, but whatever.
They're offended by us anyways. A lot of times,
some of them are.
Yeah, it's a difficult question, and it's a difficult time because right now there's just so much outrage in the culture that we have. Everything, people are just trying to find anything to be outraged by.
Yeah. I
don't know what percentage of a sales force should be women. I don't know what that is. Should it be 50-50? In sales forces that I run, it's more like 80-20 women to men. Mm-hmm. And because that's always worked for me. And I came out of a business where my mom and her business partner, 2 women, started the business, went to the bank to get a loan. And the bank said, if you can bring your husbands in to co-sign for you, we'll give you a loan. And neither one of them had a husband. So that was the beginning part of 2 $25 desks, being pushed together and bootstrapping the whole way. So that was 1980. Things have changed, and there are more women entrepreneurs now, and every new business started, most of them will be women that start those new businesses in the United States right now. So that's progress. I will tell you, I don't know what the percentage is, but it still feels like it's too low for a number of reasons. And even more than that, I think that women have a tougher time with a certain set of men. And we had a little bit of a conversation about this. There's still, in some places in Silicon Valley, they call it bro culture, where it's a men's locker room. That's not a very enticing place for women to want to work. Yeah. So that's one part. That's low MQ. That's low moral quotient. Yeah. So that's what that is. And there's the thing right now about toxic masculinity. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There's low MQ. And, the thing about men are aggressive. Well, the same aggression that you complain about with somebody who has low MQ is the same aggression that someone with high MQ decides, I'm stepping between the bully and the person being bullied. Mm-hmm. That's the same aggression. Okay. But that's high MQ. There's a lot of low MQ in business. And it's interesting to me to have many, many women that work for me, many women, and to see the fact that when they start saying something that if a man would say it would have credibility is doubted because it's a woman saying it for men with low MQ. And there's still too much of that. And I think that makes it more difficult for women because they're being seen as a woman and not a subject matter expert and consultative and trusted advisor. And I think it's harder. And I don't think it should be. It's not right that that's true. And it's getting better. It's getting better, but we still have a lot of work to do. And the other thing that I will tell you is when you look at some sales floors, and I get to see more than most as a speaker, I get to walk into a room, and I've been in rooms where there's 276 men and 24 women, and you look at that and you're like, that might be out of balance. Maybe that's naturally the number of women that actually want to work for that company in that particular industry, but it's out of balance. And invariably, if I see a company that has women in leadership roles, they tend to have more women in sales roles. So I think that probably what we need to focus on is not the actual raw number of what number of men should be nurses. I don't know. There's more and more of them all the time. And that's probably a good thing, that people find that the sex doesn't matter. It's whether or not that's your mission and that's what you want to do. But I wonder if, instead of really the focus being on how do we get more women into sales, I think that might be solved faster with the idea, how do we get more women into leadership roles? And then that might change the number of people who say, this looks like a good place where I'm going to have a chance to advance and grow. So I wonder if we just get it wrong when we look at it this through the one lens, which is, what's the raw number, which I see. So I look at it too. I just told you I look at it. But I wonder if that doesn't get fixed if people say, I could grow up to have that job. I could take this job and I could end up in this kind of a leadership role. And we need to have the conversation about how we do better at that.
That was awesome, Anthony. That was
I care deeply. It's an issue I care deeply about. And I think it is unfair, especially, in some places now where the subject matter expert is more of an engineering kind of approach. So the person who's really smart and the woman's really smart, but there's almost, even with men, the ego is so strong. If you're the smartest person in the room, then I can't be the smartest person in the room. So now I automatically have to start resisting you because I have to prove I'm smart. But with women, I think that comes more from men. Well, if she's this smart, then what does that mean about me? And men, that dynamic, I think, is difficult.
Oh. Well, we're not going to solve it all today, right? But I think, to your point,
I thought we just did. I just did that whole thing.
You know what? Okay, I think maybe the three of us could go on a road show, and we could have a whole entire thing
Build
around
leadership. Build female leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably the first place to start.
It's definitely, we touched on it at one point in a previous podcast about how the difference between, the raw numbers of what are the female CEOs in the top Fortune 500 or what have you, and it is quite low. One of the companies I work for, we have a female CEO, and she faces a lot of very interesting issues in the bro culture. But we're 50-50 as a tech company, female to male. And it's a very encouraging female environment for sure, because there's a woman in leadership.
But she certainly has her challenges too that she's had to deal with as a female CEO and leader. She still has walls that she hits because of it. That she shouldn't have to. If she was a man, she wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's getting better. I mean, and there's more women CEOs, and there's way more women entrepreneurs. And I mean, all of that is really, really positive and good.
Yeah, those numbers are good. Vistage is another one. I belong to Vistage, and there's usually 2 women in a Vistage group, and 14 men. Yeah.
Interesting. Hey, give me 1 second, you guys. I'm about to run out of juice. I need to get my computer charger. 1 second.
Okay. We'll pause.
Actually, now we can talk about Rachel behind her back, and I can say all those things that I wanted to say, but
I mean, go ahead. She's not listening. That's why my phone's still plugged in.
Forgive me, I was fully charged when we started.
And then Rachel, she did this thing where, she's back.
Yeah.
That's fast, too.
I have a question. I feel like you're already billing me, Anthony, so I might as well get the most out of this. Take advantage of this. I was thinking about this when I was looking at your book on displacing competition, and one thing that happened, and I don't know, I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to approach it yet. I got an introduction to a company from the former founder and CEO of this big hospitality company. And he introduced me via email to the new CEO, because when he was on my other podcast, he said, this company really needs the type of work that you do. I'm going to introduce you to the new CEO. And so he did it via email. Of course, I never got anywhere via email with that CEO and left messages, didn't get anywhere. And then I had another connection at that same company. So I'm like, I reached out to that guy and I didn't get anywhere. And then I reached out to someone who knew that guy and I said, could you kind of do a warm introduction for me? And I tried to take another route. And so he did that. And then that guy replied to my connection and said, we only use internal trainers, so we won't talk to her. So that to me, the internal trainer is competition. How do you go break into that and disrupt that and show the value of it when you can't get them on the phone?
Well, you have to get them on the phone or you have to get some sort of a meeting. I mean, you can't disrupt it, but you can start trying to get them on the phone with a pitch to say, listen, I can probably enable your trainer with better content.
Yeah.
I can probably enable your trainer. And as part of anything that we would propose a train the trainer. So your trainer could, in fact, take over. But I just wonder if your trainer has all the insight and all the processes and methodologies that we believe would serve you based on the past work we've done. And you're going to have to get there.
Yeah.
And so this is the challenge. If you're afraid of making a phone call,
which I'm not,
then
I'm not.
Telling somebody their baby is ugly is a much higher threshold. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of trainers don't have their own content. They're not the content creator,
right, to
say I've created a methodology or I've created a process or I've done this work in instructional design to build something like that. If you've done that, then that's probably the conversation to say is, okay, we know your trainer, we like your trainer a lot, and you should make sure that they're enabled to have all the things that they need to successfully train your sales force, and I can close that gap for you.
Excellent.
Can I share with you 3 or 4 of the things that we noticed about your company that we think you could close the gap on very quickly, and we could enable your trainer as well as your team to be able to do these things? You have to have a theory, as to why they should do something different than look at their own trainer.
Yeah. Thank you.
That word enable that you use several times is such a positive word. It's a really good word that everybody should take note of, because it's not like, oh, I can improve what your trainer's doing. I can fix, enable is very empowering. It's a good word.
And there's a whole lot of trainers, in the world who need more content to train. I know this. They use my YouTube videos. They use my Sunday newsletter. They use the blog posts. Yeah. And I know because they send me notes and tell me, I'm using your YouTube videos because we don't have content around this, and you do, and they take them.
I mentioned to Gitomer, I said many, many, many years ago when I started my company, I had quoted him a few times in some of my training and some of my presentations. He's like, so you were stealing my material? I said, no, I gave you credit for, I took your quotes and I gave you credit for it. You know how he is. He's just busting my chops.
I know exactly how he is. He's the best. He accused me of the same thing.
I'm like, dude, I'm promoting you.
The best, he went back and pulled the first email he ever sent me when I had thesalesblog.com, and I started to build out that property with content on a daily basis. And when I bought the name thesalesblog.com, it's because I couldn't get salesblog.com, because some jerk in Charlotte was sitting on the name and had bought it years earlier and never did anything with it. It was just sitting there. And then I got this note, and it said, I own salesblog.com, right? And I had no idea. I had no idea who owned it at all. But he and I have had a number of really good laughs about that. And he's now got salesblog.com up and running. And so I have the sales blog. He has salesblog.com. So we had a number of emails back and forth on that. It's really funny. He went back and he keeps everything. So just so you know, whatever you've sent him, he probably still has. But I said, do you remember the original email you sent me? And he didn't, but he went back and found it, and we both had a really good laugh over it.
So, Rachel, we need to get the THEE salesblog.com.
That won't confuse anybody.
Yeah, there was I met Jeffrey a couple years ago at a Salesforce event in New York, and we connected, and I said, I'm only a 4-hour drive from you, and that didn't really interest him. And I had him on my email list, which was really against the law, but he was opening my emails clearly because he opened one of my emails about a podcast where I interviewed a CEO of a larger sales training organization. He emailed me and said, I think it's time you put me on your podcast, and had a couple other choice words in his email. And I said, I've been waiting for your email. And
Nice.
And the relationship took over from there. He's a funny guy. I know you're the president of his fan club, so I don't want to steal your thunder.
Yeah, no, I in full disclosure, I called him night before last. I called him because he didn't respond to a text I sent him, and he's a few years older than me.
One or two.
Maybe more than a few. And he's so happy.
Yeah.
He's so successful. He's still contributing. And I just wanted to tell him how much of a role model he is.
Yeah.
He's still working. He's still working.
Yeah.
Not like playing or dabbling. He's still in the game, and he's so happy doing it. And it's impressive to me. I called him to tell him that.
Aw. I thought maybe you were calling to check up on us to make sure we were okay to talk to.
Some people are built that way, though. I don't think I'll ever stop working. Like, I enjoy progress and creating new things and helping people and seeing the results. And I think some people work towards that end where they get to, retire and sit on their couch and do whatever they want. But most of those people get bored real fast. Like my father, he retired last year, and they travel a lot, but he'd been, practicing dentistry for 40 some plus years, and he's retired, but now he's doing other things. But I don't ever see like stopping, and I just see progress and going to the next level until the end of my days. And I'm sure Gitomer obviously is one of those guys too. Just like keep going, keep creating, keep helping, keep contributing.
His stamina is inspiring.
I don't think everybody's that way, but some people are.
The research from Daniel Kahneman and others is basically the only thing. There's not, like, your goal shouldn't be to be happy, because that is a difficult thing and not the right goal. But the goal of what gives people purpose and meaning is progress. And that's what makes people really fulfilled is progress.
Yeah. Speaking of
not perfection,
we're not great at perfection, and I'm okay with that. Speaking of other progress, you've got your upcoming Outbound coming up.
We do.
You want to talk a little bit about that? I'm going to be somewhere else, but I'm going to try to show up and.
It's the greatest sales conference on earth right now, period. The end. It's like Cirque du Soleil and a rock concert as a sales conference. There's no MC. There's no pitching from the stage. It is nonstop value creation and actionable, practical content from some of the biggest thought leaders in sales, including our friend Gitomer and Andrea Waltz and Colleen Francis and Bob Berg and Victor Antonio, in addition to, Mike Weinberg, Mark Hunter, Jeb Blunt, my closest friends. So the main stage is 10 of us over the course of 2 days. And then there's a third day with workshops from a whole bunch of other people that, Sherry Levitin and Meredith Powell and Larry Levine. There's so many people. It's an amazing event. They're really, when we say like none other, it's like none other. There's no sponsor pitching from the stage. There's no wasted space. It just goes really, really fast. It's the coolest thing we've ever done.
What are the dates on that?
April 23rd through 26th.
And is it in Atlanta?
It's Atlanta at the World Congress Center.
I'm going to be in Birmingham, but I have to go through Atlanta to come back. So maybe I will see if I can crash it on the last day or something.
The last day's workshops. You want to make day 1 and 2.
Yeah, I'll have to. I don't know if I'll be able to, but I might just crash anyway and hang out.
Cancel whatever it is that you have planned. Cancel it.
It's our biggest client. I can't.
Yeah, you know what? You got to get your priorities.
I could go in your stead, Gina. I'm back for my honeymoon then, so
you can go. You could represent, Rach.
I could represent.
You can represent.
It is a great honeymoon destination. There's no doubt about it. A lot of people are having a honeymoon there.
On your way back from Paris, you can stop in Atlanta. How about that?
Deal.
It has been, and we'll include information about Outbound in the show notes as well. It has been so awesome having you on the show today, Anthony.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was great to meet both of you.
Thanks to Anthony Iannarino for being on our show today, and thank you all of our Warners for listening to this episode of Women Your Mother Warned You About. To connect with me, Gina Tremarco, Pivoton Results, or Carolina Improv, visit GinaTremarco.com.
And to connect with me, Rachel Tipton, find me on social media as Rachel on Real Estate, or visit theclosingcurve.com and find all of our social media links and free downloads on our website at womenyourmotherwarnsyouabout.com.
And please give us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, for the best relationships, keep it real, raw, and relevant.
And a little irreverence doesn't hurt either.
Bye,
Warners.
This really will get serious soon.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. I don't think anybody wants it to be serious.
This has been a presentation of the Sell or Die Network. For more podcasts that you can take out into the street and turn into money, visit sellerdienetwork.com.